Hi there, welcome to Parenting Challenging Kids. I am Dr. Michelle Alden, and today we are going to talk a little bit about middle school kids, and specifically I had a parent that wrote in a question, and not really a question, just kind of a whole thing, and so I was able to coach her through that, and so I wanted to share that with you. I changed a few things so that it doesn't sound like anybody in particular, but you may recognize some of this based on what you're probably going through with your kids. And this child was about 11 years old, and a girl, and what the mom had said was that she just has such, she said a bunch of things, but one of the things was that she has super poor time management skills, that she doesn't respect anybody's boundaries or what anybody else wants to do. She always waits till the last minute to get something done, and then she's in this panic, and then she's angry and frustrated, and that she's snarky and rude, and this used to be a child that the mom was close to, but then now just feels like, oh, she's just making me so mad all the time. And the mom said, she just will ask her, why are you doing that? Or why are you doing it that way? And the mom said that she knows that there's a lot of fear that she's feeling that's kind of driving it. I'm afraid that she's not going to get it done. I'm afraid that she's going to always be like this, or that she's, it's just going to keep getting worse. And her whole mindset was kind of that way. So I actually was able to get on a call with her and talk to her. And here's some of the things that we talked about. And I think it's just really helpful, because you may have, especially girls can be really snarky this way. And as they may have been much more congenial, when they're younger, maybe not. I mean, I work with kids that are not ever, but as they hit that middle school age, there's a lot of things that are happening in their brain. So whether they have neurodiversity already going on, ADHD, what I call the ADHD brain, and their executive functioning skills are lagging in different ways, you're going to see, even with your neurotypical kids, some executive functioning skills that maybe they had when they were younger at 9, 10 years old. And then as they hit into, with girls, it starts, really around 11, 12. Sometimes with boys, it'll be a little bit later, but you might see some real, oh, we were kind of parallel on things, and now there's this huge lag, but that's because that frontal part of their brain is growing and changing. And so we know in early teens we see, and sometimes in late teens, we see a lot of toddler-like behavior. Is just scarier because there's so much more at stake. But it is the same kind of growth in their brain that's happening when they're younger. And so going over some of those executive functions and developing those skills might still be needed. And even though they had it before, even though they didn't act like that before. So there's I think it's very helpful as a parent to remember that it's things that are going on inside of their brain, and that it's not personal, right? They don't suddenly hate you, even though they might say that. I work with a lot of kids that are more than willing to say those kind of things. And maybe you feel like, well, they've always been like this towards me. A lot of moms feel that way with their kids, especially if they've been adopted or had trauma. There's this disconnect. And so, I want you to be able to keep in mind that it isn't really personal. Even they're not trying to manipulate you. They've got their own thing going on. And so, I have other videos that talk about executive functioning skills. If you want to learn more about that, you can sign up for a call with me, and we can go through that, or you can look through this YouTube channel, like and subscribe, find all the other videos. I do a whole series on ADHD because it's really tied into, I call it the ADHD brain. It's the way their functioning is, and things you can do as a parent to help. But just know that time management is one of those things. Being able to tell how long something's going to take, how much time they need, get ready on time, get somewhere on time is challenging for these kids. And you may be the same way, or you may have the other parent may be this way. And so that can also add into it. This particular parent is like, oh my gosh, like this is just like my husband, and it's going to be the same way. He's just always panicked and running around and trying to meet these deadlines. And and I just asked, I said, well, does he get it done? And she was like, yeah, he gets it done, but it's like I'm frazzled at the end of it. It's like, okay, we need to talk about where you are as a parent, because this statement that my child's making me so mad. I'm so angry. It's like, okay, your child is not making you mad. That is your thoughts about what's happening that is making you frazzled or angry, or all of the things that you're describing. And I think it's really important to separate that, because we also want to do that, want our kids to know how to do that, right? That we're not making other people happy or mad or sad or frustrated. Like, that's their thoughts about what we're doing, and sometimes we can communicate those and we can make some progress in that area, and it may seem like it's all tied into them, but we have to be in control of our own thoughts and our own emotions. And so we really have to really get a hold of our thoughts and where we're going. So this parent had said, I'm afraid that she's going to do this and this and this, and she was really, really worried about that. And so we talked about that as well. It's like, so this fear, is it helping you? Is it not helping you? Is she getting things done? And the funny thing is that like eventually she gets things done, but it's like this tornado, right, that goes through the house, and the parents all wrapped up in it. So we talked quite a bit about just setting some parameters of like this, like one of the things is that she wasn't doing homework during this homework time. And then later when they're trying to do something else as a family, it's like she's trying to do homework at that time, or she's waiting until bedtime and then she's wanting to get it done and wanting mom's help. So setting those parameters and saying, this is the time to do this, and I'm not going to be available during this time. And if you want help, I'm available now. If you're going to do it on your own time, I'm not going to be available. And just, working through that, and then helping the parent to know how she could stay with that. So setting the parameters of what that looks like and what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Some parents are overly worried that they're not going to get it done, and so then they start trying to get it done for them, and it really becomes their project. And I really want to caution you about that, because if you have a child that's neurodivergent and you're so focused on wanting them to be mainstreamed and be, keep up and all of that, and you're really, really worried about it, that's not going to be helpful for them, right? We want them to learn the executive skills that it takes to get a project done and to be able to do all of those things. And it may very well be that you are not the best one to drive that. I call it driving the bus from the back, right? Other people call it herding cats, which is, very similar. That's not necessarily your place to do it. And I think also, and I talked to the mom about this, like, because she kept saying, I just don't know why she doesn't do it my way. Like, it's so much easier, and it would just, she could have gotten her homework done and then she could do all this other stuff. And she was kind of saying the same thing about her spouse. Like, he's the same way. It's like he just has his way of doing it. It's like, okay, so I think that sometimes we have this assumption that my way is the right way. And I can set up the parameters of what I'm willing to do and how I'm willing to be engaged, but I'm not going to be able to change how this child is and how they're doing that. I can just have them bump up against those parameters, right? Like, if you want my help, it's going to be like this. If I'm going to help you, you're not going to be able to, to yell at me, or, whatever it is. I'm happy to help you, but you're going to need to be polite while we work through this. And so then if they are rude, you can help them with like, instead of that, I need you to ask me like this, or, you can work on that piece of it if that's really bothering you. But your way is not necessarily the right way. That's the way that works for you, and it may or may not work for this child. So I think it really helps, because to look at it in terms of like, they do have their way of doing it, and if you can't help them in that way because your way and their way clashes, then that's where it may be more helpful to have the school helping with that. I had a couple of kids that we didn't do homework together because it was a clash, right? And it had to do with the way their brains were wired, and also their motivation. And I think with some kids too, if they're higher functioning autistic kids, they don't necessarily understand why you as the mom are now taking on the role as the teacher. You don't know, you weren't there, all of that. And you don't know, you are not an 11-year-old girl. And so you don't know what their world's like. So putting that back on them and on their shoulders. Like, if I can't help you, who could help you, and where can you get that help? We have had it set up with the school that homework gets done in the resource room, that resource teacher helps them break it down. Some schools have study skill classes that can help keep your kids lined out as they get into the middle school, high school years. You may need that more and more. There's a lot to juggle for them, and there's probably too much for you to try to, again, drive that bus from the back. So, you can, that age and the way her brain is operating, you're going to want to approach it like, this makes perfect sense to her, right? Like, if kids that have a hard time, that get overwhelmed, are oftentimes procrastinators and don't do anything until the last minute. Some of it is because when they first look at it, one doesn't seem like it's going to be that much. It's like, oh, this is no big deal. I can do that later, or it's not due until next month, so I don't need to work on it until the night before. And so that has to do with how their brain is like helping them, and you can chunk things out and help them to do parts of it, but really you can also work with the school to do that. For my homeschool parents that are dealing with this, which I've also been a part of that world, you are going to have to be the one that says, okay, so this week we have this project that's due at the end of the month. This week what we're going to work on is getting the information, or picking the topic, or breaking those things down for them, because their brain really is quite jumbled, even if they're neurotypical, but especially if they're not. So just keeping in mind that her frustration, the child's frustration and anger, could very well be directed at you because of the angst and the anger and all that stuff that you're feeling. But also, like, when we get really stressed out about something, we kind of want somebody to blame. It's got to be someone else's fault, even though we might be like, I shouldn't have waited till the last minute, right? As much as possible, we do want the consequences of that to kind of fall on their shoulders. So when you set the parameters of like, hey, I can help you with this, it doesn't do any good to say like, I told you 2 weeks ago I would have helped you with it. It's like, just deal with right now. Like, I can help you with this tonight, but we only have this much time to work on it, and then let's set up another time that we can work on it. So you're helping them to deal with now. Because if you keep bringing in like, I've told you this a bazillion times, or I've tried to help you with this before and you wouldn't let me help you, or that's why I told you 2 weeks ago that you should do X, Y, and Z. None of that is helpful, especially the way their brain is. And it just adds some layers there and kind of creates more of a barrier in getting that work done. So those are some key tips, I think. One is just recognizing, and this is a personal work that you have to do. It's an ongoing work, I think, that we have to do, is that she's not in charge of making you mad. She's not doing this to you. You have to get a hold of you may be mad, and it's okay to recognize, like, I'm frustrated because I don't have time to help you with this right now. I'm frustrated because I'm worried about you right now. But you're making me frustrated is not, and I know it's just a somatic, it may just seem like just a somatics thing, but it really is important in how we're processing things and what we're thinking about it. This parent came into this call pretty loaded with all the reasons why her brain was telling her that this child is just pretty awful. Like, not that she was saying like, my child's awful, but she was angry and frustrated and snarky and rude and all of these things. And by the end of that call, we kind of got back to this place of like, I actually really like this kid, and she's got a really great personality. And yeah, she is kind of like, do it at the last minute, but she does typically get things done. And I can do better myself at not jumping in the fray and getting all emotionally tied up about it. And And so that's such a good place, but it's going to take practice, right? Because that's not our go-to. And so in your relationships, just think about that when you're thinking like, oh, he's making me so mad. It's like, is he? Or what are your thoughts that are driving, having that feeling for you? Because it is our thoughts that are causing that feeling. And it's not that our thoughts are wrong, but we just need to understand that and come at it from a different way. And once we were able to take a step back and think about like why that was like the fear and why that was bothering her, and also feeling like, well, I can't not help her because then I look bad as a parent that I didn't help her, and or if she doesn't get this done, then the teachers are going to be like, why didn't you help her get it done? All of those things that this parent was putting on herself, and not allowing to just kind of, yeah, we have those feelings, but here's what we can do to help her and also to help her child to develop and grow. And so, part of creating boundaries and setting parameters around things and helping them is to help this child develop those executive skills. We have to help them to chunk things out and take things apart and put it back together so that they develop those executive functioning skills to do that. Because even if they had that when they were younger, if they could do that when they were younger, when they go through that change in their brain and they're going through puberty and all of those things, it doesn't mean that they're just going to go through it and not have any, like if we don't teach them, just like when they're toddlers, we had to teach them in order for them to get through that. We have to continue to teach them through this time when their brain is really growing. And that is another part of it, is if you feel like I can't do it. I can't, where you hit heads too much, then again, I want to just remind you that you're going to want to look for those resources that can help to do that. And a lot of that, I think, really needs to happen at the school. So work with your team at the school to help her to be able to do that. So those were the things that came up in that call. There was a lot more. We had a good session going through all of it. And if you are interested in getting coaching in that way, the way that you can do that is to join us in the Playroom, where you can get coaching online and you can hear other people get coached and learn from the things that are going on with their kids, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that's just like my kid, or thank you so much for that because I needed that. When you raise your hand to get coached, you're helping everybody in the group. It's very supportive. So I will put the link for that. If you need more help than that, more intensive help, I do have a 12-week program that I would love to guide you through, and that's when you get one-on-one coaching with me. And that would be a great joy to see that transformation happen in your family. So I will also put the link to the website and you can look at that, and I will talk to you again later. Thanks for listening today.